Golden bite-sized Mauritian samosas were one of my favorite things to eat growing up. They're a piece of home, something my grandma would make for family gatherings. And she taught me a trick to simplify this recipe. This is a tasty street food tour where I'll be cooking some of the best street eats from my new cookbook. This is a book about street food. Our next stop is Mauritius, where my family are from, for potato and beef samosa. For a long time, I thought this recipe was really hard to make, but my Grandmere shared her secret ingredient, spring roll pastry, which is exactly what street food vendors in Mauritius use too. Okay, so two parts today. We have the pastry, which is already done, so let's get on to the second, which is the potato and beef filling. So let's get started. Okay, so first step is to boil the potatoes. I've got a pot of water on the boil. I'm gonna add a generous amount of salt in there because this is all about adding heaps of flavor to the samosa. Salt goes in. I'm gonna peel my potatoes and chop them up into smaller pieces so that they can cook quickly. So in terms of what potato to use, a starchy potato would be best because it holds quite nicely, but we're gonna encase this in some pastry afterwards. So it doesn't matter if you can't get your hands on some starchy potatoes, any potato will do. I'm gonna chop these potatoes into smaller cubes so they can cook quickly. Potatoes are chopped. They're gonna go straight into my pot of well-salted boiling water for extra flavor. All right, next step. So to cook off the beef mince, we're gonna start off just like we do with most Mauritian dishes or Indian curries. Garlic, ginger, onion, tomato, and some spices. So I'm gonna grate some ginger and garlic and finally chop some onion. I'm gonna grate using a microplane, so just a grater with a finer grate. I find it's much easier to use. You could use a food processor if you'd like. Okay, that looks good. Let's do the garlic as well. Now I know this recipe in my book does mention to use a pressure cooker, but I don't have one on me today, so I'm going to show you another method of cooking off the beef mince. Garlic and ginger are grated. We're going to chop up some onion. Just want about maybe half of this onion. Peel the skin off. So I just like to slice downwards, not hitting the end so the onion just stays intact. And then I'm slicing horizontally into the onion and then down so we can get our chop. There we go. All right, that looks good. We're also gonna chop up some green chilies for a bit of spice. You could use any chilies here. I just like green chilies because they have a nice warmth to them. Not too spicy, also quite fragrant. So I'm just giving them a chop. And one tomato just to add some natural richness and sweetness to the mince. So we're just gonna chop that up as well. I'm gonna chop that up. Okay, I think we're ready to start cooking. So whilst my potatoes are still boiling, they shouldn't take too long because we've cut them into smaller cubes, maybe another 5 minutes. We don't want it to be soggy or mushy, so just cook through, but still a bit of resistance. So whilst that's cooking, I'm gonna put my wok or pan on medium to high heat. We're gonna add in some oil, some neutral oil, which just means one with no flavor. Okay, to my wok, I'm gonna add some onion. We're gonna soften it for that natural sweetness. And this is the base of a lot of Mauritian cooking, which is usually influenced by Indian or Asian flavors. So this is all about flavor. We've got heaps of spices to add in, onion, garlic, ginger, the chili. So we're just cooking this to soften. You can see it's starting to become translucent. We just don't want it to brown too much. I'm just stirring it at the same time. As it's cooking, I'm gonna add in the green chilies. Give that a stir, let that cook for a little bit longer. Okay, you can see there it's starting to soften. It smells really nice. And next we're gonna add in the grated garlic and ginger. Okay, we're gonna give that a mix. And I'm cooking for another minute or so, just so it becomes nice and fragrant. We're taking that raw edge off the sharp garlic and ginger. Let's add the beef mince in next. Just breaking it up and stirring at the same time. Just making sure to brown around the edges. And you can see here I'm using a wok or a larger pan so that the mince doesn't start to stew. We do want to get a nice crisp brown on the edges of that beef mince. Alrighty, that's looking good. It's smelling really good. Whilst that's cooking away, I'm going to check on my potato. I'm just going to pull a piece out, and with a fork, I'm just going to go into it to see if it's cooked through. It's not soggy or too soft. There's also a little bit of resistance. So I'm going to drain the potato, then mash it with a fork. All right. The potato goes into a mixing bowl, and we're going to mash that with a fork. It's mashing really easily, and there's no moisture. Just what we want for our samosa filling. All right, potato is mashed. We're going to set that aside and finish off our beef mince. So you can see in here the beef mince is starting to brown around the edges. We're going to add some spices to it next. We're going to add some pepper. We're adding some turmeric for a bit of warmth and a bit of color as well. We also have here some curry powder, garam masala, and a bit of extra coriander. So I quite like the taste of coriander. We use it a lot in Mauritian cooking as well. So we're going to add that straight in, and a pinch of salt. Give that a mix. Wow, you can see there the colors are starting to come through, smelling really nice. And to freshen it and add a bit of extra flavor, I'm also going to add in some chopped up tomatoes. Smells good. You can see it's starting to brown around the edges. The color's coming through from that turmeric. Smells really nice, really fragrant. Almost reminds me of home. Give it a little bit longer. Whilst that's cooking away, we have our potato mince ready. We're also going to add some fresh ingredients to this. So we've got spring onion, coriander, and some curry leaves for a bit of extra fragrance. Okay, spring onion. Let's chop up some coriander as well. And some curry leaves. Now you can use fresh or dried. It's just going to add an extra level of fragrance to this dish. All right, that looks good. Okay, whilst the beef mince is cooking away, my potato mix is ready and everything's ready to bring together. I'm just going to tidy up a little to set myself up to make the samosas. That is nearly ready. Also have some oil here ready to fry. So that is smelling really good. It looks really nice. It's cooked down. What we don't want is a soggy beef mix because we want the filling to almost be dry but also stick together so it holds within the samosa so that when we fry it later on it's really crunchy on the outside. So we're going to add this to our potato mix. Next we're going to add in those fresh herbs, so the coriander and spring onion as well as the curry leaves. Looks great. Colors of Mauritius. Give that a mix. Wow. I mean, you could eat that as is, but everything's better fried, right? Crunchy. Okay, just making sure to incorporate it. Get all the flavors through there, through the potato. And you can see, because I've spent a bit more time making sure the beef is cooked down and it's not soggy. Everything is sticking quite nicely. We don't have a wet mix. Okay, quick taste, make sure it's on point. Happy with that, but a little bit more salt. Okay, now I'm going to let that cool slightly, and whilst that's cooling, I have my store-bought spring roll wrappers here ready to go. But to help it stick, we need to make a glue, a flour glue. And to do that, it's really simple. I basically have just plain flour and water. We're going to mix that together. A bit of water. Just giving that a mix. What we're looking for is a thick sticky paste to glue the pastry together with. There we go, that looks good. Doesn't have to be perfectly smooth, doesn't matter if there's a couple of lumps in there. We're just going to use the tiniest bit to stick the pastry together. Okay, I've got my pastry brush ready on the go. Got my filling, my wrappers. We also have our wok with some oil in here, ready to fry. Let's form our samosas. This is the fun part. So there's no real trick to it. Sometimes the spring roll pastry comes in square sheets. Sometimes you can get it in round sheets as well. These are freshly made. So I'm going to work with one sheet at a time. They are very delicate, so I'm just going to go back in there, making sure I grab one. There we go. And I always like to keep the pastry covered with a lightly damp towel because I don't want it to dry out. So this is just going to keep it the tiniest bit moist. So pastry onto my bench. I'm going to add some of the filling in the center. So you can make these any size you'd like, small or big. My Grandmere would often make them quite small so that a lot of people can taste them and you get a lot of crispy outsides, but I kind of like them quite big because they're really tasty and I like to eat a whole samosa to myself. So we're going to put a generous chunk of filling in the center. Just like so. And with that, I'm kind of forming a triangle shape just to start with. making sure it's nicely compact and compressed. We're gonna fold the pastry over. And with my finger and thumbs, I'm just kind of making that triangle shape that we're looking for, the triangle samosa, just like so. If you get a little tear in the wrapper, don't worry too much because we're gonna fold the pastry back over. So we're gonna fold this part back over, like so, with this bit of pastry up here, the excess part. Just gonna use a bit of glue to help it stick. There we go. Folding that back down onto the samosa. And with the excess pastry up here, we're folding it back up onto the samosa, using a bit of glue to stick. Cool. And then finishing it off at the bottom with a bit more glue. There you go. That's huge. I mean, I like a big samosa, so you can make them small or big. It's totally up to you. Okay, let's make a few more. Whilst we're making them, I'm gonna turn my oil on, get that ready to go. Nice big samosa. It's like scrapbooking potato and beef. This is the last one. I'm just gonna finish this off. Let's cut those excess bits off. And I think we're ready to cook these samosas. So I have my oil on the heat. I know in the recipe in my cookbook, I do say to bring the oil up to 180 degrees. And you might be wondering, how can you tell when the oil is at that temperature? So I'm gonna show you my chopstick method. Basically is when we put the chopstick into the oil, it should start to bubble and sizzle around the edges, which basically means it's ready to fry. But if you'd like to see my batter method, check out my video for my sweet and spicy cauliflower. Okay, let's test this out. As the chopstick goes in, you're seeing tiny little bubbles around there, which means the oil is hot enough to fry the samosas. So I'm gonna cook them in batches because I wanna keep the temperature of the oil constant. Okay, samosas go in. Ooh, how good does that look? Let's do 2 at a time. So you can see here I'm shallow frying the samosas, so they're not completely submerged. So just to get the top kind of crisping away at the same time, I'm just ladling some oil over, almost basting with a spoon. You can see there it's bubbling on top as well. So the great thing about cooking these is that the filling is already cooked through. So all we need is for the pastry on the outside to become golden and crunchy. Oh wow. Ooh. Okay, let's check out the bottom of this samosa because we're gonna flip them over. Yeah, another 30 seconds. The great thing is that you don't need to take them out and cut them open to tell if the filling is cooked through. It's already cooked, so all we're doing is cooking the outside. I'm going to carefully flip the samosas so they can cook on the other side as well. There we go. You can see the base that, oh, the base is golden and check that out, crunchy on the outside. So another minute or so, I've got my plate here lined with some paper towel ready to drain the samosas. All right, they're ready to come out. Ooh. So I'm just taking the samosas out as they're cooked and placing them onto my tray or plate lined with paper towels just to drain any excess oil. Let's cook the rest of them. So it is worth making a big batch of samosas and freezing them because all you have to do then is put them into the hot oil and cook them later on. And the good thing about them is they don't need to defrost, so you can cook them straight from the freezer. So something you can make ahead of time as well. So if you have a party or celebration or a big event coming up, you can make these the week before, the month before, freeze them, pull them out, and just deep fry them on the day. You can see they're golden and brown on the bottom and around the edges. We're just going to carefully flip them. They are very big. I'm proud of myself for that. There we go. The great thing about these is that you actually don't need a dipping sauce. There's so much flavor in that parcel, potato, that spiced beef mince, all those fresh herbs in there as well, and the crunchy outside. So I'm gonna let it cool slightly and then we'll dig in. And there you have it, my potato and beef samosa. Okay, gonna go for this big boy. Okay, I'm ready. Wow, look at that. Can you hear that crunch? that crunchy pastry on the outside, the soft, tender beef, spiced potatoes, the fresh herbs come through. That is delicious. And although these may seem intricate, these Mauritian samosas are really easy to make, especially with my Grandmere's tips and tricks handed down to me and now to you. Now making these are really satisfying and the results even better. You can find this recipe in my new street food cookbook that's out now. Make sure to grab your copy with the link in the description. And next week we'll be heading to Mumbai in India, so subscribe to see what iconic street food we'll be making next. Glue, 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 glue. They're so big. My Grandmere would be like, oh my God, they're huge. Big samosas. I mean, it means you spend less time making them, more time eating them. Grandmere, there's my top tip for you. I'm kidding.